Rozmawiamy z naszym specjalnym gościem, Grahamem Mastertonem. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Before the interview, you had a prelection about sexual books and erotica. How it started that you were writing books about the sexuality?
I used to be a newspaper reporter, but after I stopped being a newspaper reporter, I became, almost by accident, the editor of two men's magazines, two sex magazines, Mayfair and Penthouse. And during the time I was there, I learned a lot about sex. I met a lot of girls. Every month, of course, there'd be a new girl for the centrefold, and I got to talk to them about their sexual problems, and also got to meet a lot of sex experts. And because of the knowledge I gained from that, I felt I was qualified to write a sex book, which I did, and it was Magia Sexu, as it's called in Poland, How to Drive Your Man Wild in Bed. It was very successful, and it just went on from there, and I've written about 14 of them.
Do you think there's a lot of space for sex, for erotica in fantasy and science fiction?
Oh yes, the two very much overlap. Even in horror, there's a strong sexual element, because when you're sexually aroused, that's when you're at your most vulnerable. And I've written a lot of erotic horror stories, and I've had collections put together of all my erotic horror stories, and there is quite often a strong erotic element in some of my major horror novels, because at that time when you're really aroused sexually, you've sort of opened yourself up in your passions, and if something then very horrible and dangerous happens, it seems to make it all the more frightening.
How do you remember your first books, which were published in Poland with the Amber company who published your books?
Well, this was 1989 when we first got approached by Amber to publish my horror, the Manitou they wanted to publish in Warsaw. And in those days, I was married to my late wife, Agnieszka, was Polish. And she said to me, "Oh, you must get your books published in Poland." And because she was born in Germany and never been to Poland, and we thought she'd love to go and see Poland. The publishers then said, "Well, we can't pay you any money because the zloty was not convertible with the British pound." They said, "But if you will publish the book, and if we'll pay for you to come to Warsaw, and we'll give you some icons and maybe some kielbasa to pay for the horror books." So we said, "Oh, all right then." In the end, I said, "All right," because Agnieszka wanted to go so much, and that's how we first came to Poland back in 1989. And of course, still communist then. And what I hadn't realised was the Manitou was the first Western horror novel to be published since the war in Poland, and it became a huge success.
Do you think that any of your books are going to be made into movies, except the Manitou, which was already made?
You've got some hot news here, because on Thursday, at last, after a long negotiation, I've signed a contract for a movie option anyway, not a full contract, but a movie option contract for Walkers, which was my book about lunatics trapped in the walls of a lunatic asylum. And Walkers has been bought, the option has been bought by Jules Stewart, who is the mother of Kristen Stewart, who is the actress in the Twilight films, and she is a movie producer. She's got her own company called Libertine Films, and she's wanted for a long time to make a film of Walkers, and now it looks as though there's a chance anyway that it may come to the screen, because she's a good film producer, and all we need is about $35 million and we'll be there.
Now zombie are in many books, in many movies. Are you going to make more books with zombie in it?
I try not to use the classical villains like zombies and vampires. I've written about 2 vampire books, one of which was a Manitou book that happened to have vampires in it, and the other one was a book called Descendant, which was about how the Nazis during the war used vampires to hunt down the resistance in Belgium, and the hero, his job is to go and track down the vampires. but I didn't use the traditional sort of vampires, like Christopher Lee in the Hammer films, or the Twilight films, not pale, interesting young boy vampires. Mine were like the real Romanian Strigoi, and they didn't bite your neck, because that's stupid, you can't get blood out of somebody just by biting their neck like that, and they can't go around for the next few days going, oh dear, I've got 2 little holes in my neck, and I'm not feeling very well, I'm turning into a vampire. It's been done so many times. My vampires cut you open, got your main artery and sucked it like a petrol pump, But I'm not going to write any books about zombies or vampires or werewolves. It's been done so many times, and I think the great strength of my work is that I write about things that, although they're well-known myths in various cultures, they are things that, it's like I wrote about basilisks coming to life, the stone basilisks in Cracow on the churches, coming to life and chasing after people. Who's done that before? Never. And so I always try and find something unusual. I think it makes it more scary, actually.
About your book Apocalypse, do you think that is Apocalypse that popular in the United States, and do you think that any apocalypse will happen soon, maybe?
Which book are you talking about? Sorry.
Apocalypse. Plague. I'm sorry.
Oh, Plague. Yeah, Plague. Oh, I've always liked writing disaster novels. There's nothing like writing a great big disaster novel in which everybody gets ill. I wrote Plague, and then Famine, in which everybody starved, and I've just finished Drought, which is all about a severe drought in the United States. The funny thing is, I had the idea for Drought about 15 years ago and never got around to writing it. And when I did write it, there was a real drought in America, which gave me some wonderful research, but I had to make my drought even worse than the real drought, which was quite difficult. But yes, that drought will be coming out from Albatross Books, I think within the next 6 months. No, I love disaster novels. Great, you can lay waste to whole countries like that, not just one haunted house.
And are people in the United States that interested in Apocalypse as it's shown probably in Poland? There are many programs with...
That book has been printed and reprinted for years. I wrote that a long time ago. But I think people love reading about the world coming to an end.
Recently, the Panic book you wrote was published. Do you think is this book any kind of specific? Do you think not specific is special for you? Did you make it personally special?
Yes, it's special in 2 ways. Of course, the most important way that it's special is that the last time I was in Warsaw, I began to read more and more details about what had happened at the beginning of World War II in the Campinos forest, when the Nazis shot thousands and thousands of politicians, journalists, priests, anybody Polish they thought who would be a threat to them running the country of Poland under German rule. And very few people in the West know about this massacre. It's not very well known. And I thought it was time. It's such a ghastly, terrible massacre that I thought it was about time it was written about. The other second part about it is that when I wrote that book, my wife Wisława had just died, and it helped me to not only to write about Poland, but to make the character in the book was a widower like I had just become, and so I could get some of my feelings out in the book, and that was very helpful in that respect. But it's very much a book about Poland and for Poland, and to make people realise a lot of the suffering that went on. There's a lot of it's been either not known about or it's been forgotten.
And apart from your books, how do you like Cracow?
Oh, I love Cracow. This is about the 4th or the 5th time I've been here, and yes, I like it a lot actually. I had a good time here. It has some very good food here as well. Oh yeah, I love Polish food.
And about the convention?
Convention's been interesting.
Okay. Rozmawialiśmy z naszym gościem specjalnym, Grahamem Mastertonem. Thank you very much for interview.
It's a great pleasure. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you.